Morning light filtered softly through the blinds into the bedroom of the two-story house on Holly Street. Sarah Hartman, an investigative reporter for the Idaho Press Tribune, stretched in bed and glanced at the clock. It was 7:30 a.m., the time her husband Michael usually finished his morning run. She heard the front door slam, then the sound of running water in the shower downstairs. Their routine was planned down to the smallest detail, as befitted a family in the public eye. Michael Hartman, the Canyon County District Attorney, was considered a rising star in the Idaho legal world. At 38, he had already earned a reputation as an uncompromising crime fighter and a favorite of local conservative circles. Sarah came downstairs as Michael was putting on his usual dark blue suit. Tall, with regular features and premature gray at the temples, he looked like the embodiment of the American dream. Successful, confident, unshakable. "Today is an important day," he said, tying his tie in front of the mirror in the hallway. "The Carlisle case hearings are starting." The James Carlisle case had been making headlines all over Idaho. The owner of a chain of elite fitness centers had been arrested on suspicion of organizing a network of sexual exploitation of minors. Michael was the lead prosecutor, and for him, this case could be a springboard to the position of state attorney general. "Good luck." Sarah kissed her husband on the cheek. "Take them down." Michael smiled, holding her hand in his for a moment. "You know I'm not doing this for my career. People like that belong behind bars." When the door closed behind Michael, Sarah lingered at the window. Their house in the historic Nampa neighborhood was the envy of the neighborhood. Victorian style, carefully selected furniture, immaculate lawn. They had paid off their mortgage early. The combined incomes of a prosecutor and a journalist were enough for a comfortable life in a small town. After breakfast, Sarah sat down at her laptop. Her latest article on corruption in the City Planning Council had caused a stir, and her editor wanted a follow-up. But it was hard to concentrate. Her gaze kept falling on a photo in a silver frame, her and Michael at the mayor's charity dinner last year. The golden couple, as they were called in the society pages. Around noon, Sarah decided to take a break and drove downtown. Nampa, Idaho's second-largest city, retained the atmosphere of a typical American suburb, large enough for anonymity, but not large enough for true isolation. It was still a place where people greeted each other on the streets. The Starbucks on the corner of 12th Avenue was a relatively new establishment, attracting a mix of students from nearby Northwest Nazarene College and office workers. Sarah walked inside, smelling the familiar aroma of coffee and baked goods. "Good morning," greeted the young woman behind the counter. "What would you like?" "An Americano with a double espresso, please," Sarah said, taking out her wallet. "Megan, I'll get it," came a voice from behind the coffee machine. Sarah looked up and saw a young man who had taken the order from the girl. His name tag read, Jaden. He looked no older than 16 or 17, thin, with shoulder-length dark hair and a serious, focused gaze. His movements were precise and confident. "You're a journalist, right?" he asked, handing her the drink. "I read your article about the city council. Great work." Sarah was surprised. "Thank you. I didn't think young people still read newspapers." "I'm not your typical teenager," Jaden replied with a slight smile. "Besides, your husband is handling the Carlisle case. It's all anyone is talking about." There was something strange in his voice when he mentioned Michael, but Sarah didn't think much of it. She took her coffee and headed for the corner table where she usually worked when she got out of the house. The article wasn't coming together. Her thoughts kept returning to Michael, to how he had changed over the past few months. At first, it was small things. He answered the phone less often when she called during the day. He had meetings he didn't mention in advance. Then, there were the strange messages she accidentally saw when he asked her to find something on his phone. The password on his laptop, which hadn't been there before. "The case requires my full attention," he explained when she asked about his absence from home. "This is the most important investigation of my career." And Sarah believed him. She wanted to believe him. 15 years of marriage, the last 10 of which were spent in Nampa, where they had moved from Boise when Michael was offered the position of assistant district attorney. No children, no loud scandals, just work and the respect of the community. When the phone vibrated, Sarah flinched. It was Michael. "Hi, honey." His voice sounded strangely tense. "I'll be late tonight. New evidence in the Carlisle case, need to go over it with the team." "Sure," she replied, feeling the familiar pang of doubt. "Anything serious?" "Not over the phone," he snapped. "I'll tell you when I get home." The conversation ended. Sarah put her phone away and caught Jaden's gaze from behind the counter. He quickly looked away, but something in his eyes made her wary. A strange expression, a mixture of sympathy and guilt. On her way home, she drove past the county courthouse. Michael's black SUV was parked in the lot. On impulse, Sarah parked on a nearby street and waited. 40 minutes later, Michael came out, not alone. With him was a man in an expensive suit whom she didn't recognize. They got into the man's car and drove away. Sarah followed, trying to keep her distance. The car stopped at the Copper Cauldron restaurant on the outskirts of town, not the most obvious place for a prosecutor's business meeting. Too intimate, too hidden from prying eyes. Michael came home late that evening. He smelled of whiskey and expensive cologne. He talked about a breakthrough in the case, about new testimony, about how they had cornered Carlisle. Sarah listened, nodded, asked the right questions, but her gaze was fixed on a small red spot on his shirt collar, too dark for wine, too much like a lipstick mark. At night, when Michael was asleep, she checked his phone. Nothing suspicious, too clean, as if he had deliberately deleted all traces. But at the edge of her consciousness, a thought was already forming that she was afraid to admit even to herself. Her perfect husband was leading a double life, and she, an investigative journalist, had not noticed it until it was too late. The Idaho Press-Tribune newsroom was buzzing like a disturbed beehive. The paper was due to go to press in 3 hours, and the main article on the corruption scandal still needed work. Sarah sat at her desk, surrounded by printouts and photographs, but her thoughts were far from municipal contracts. "Hartman, are you with us?" Editor Tom Baker's voice brought her back to reality. "I'm asking if you'll be able to finish by 5. "Of course," Sarah nodded, closing the notebook in which she had just written down everything she knew about Michael's meeting at the Copper Cauldron. "I'm almost done." When Tom left, she opened a new document on her computer and named it Personal Investigation. 15 years of journalism had taught her one thing: organize information, even if it seems insignificant. It all started about 3 months ago when Michael was assigned the Carlisle case. That's when the first unexplained absences, the disconnected phone, and the new passwords on devices appeared. Sarah opened her browser and typed in James Carlisle Nampa case. The official reports were sparse. The owner of a chain of fitness centers was accused of organizing a sexual exploitation ring. The victims were mainly minors, boys and girls between the ages of 14 and 17, who worked at his establishments. Carlisle used his position and influence to coerce them into sexual acts, which were then recorded and distributed on private networks. The case was being handled jointly by the district attorney's office and the Nampa police. Sarah copied the names of all the key players in the investigation. She knew many of them through Michael. One name caught her attention: Detective Carol Montgomery, recently transferred from the Boise Police Department. They had never met, but Michael had mentioned her several times as the only competent detective in this swamp. After finishing her article on corruption, Sarah sent the file to her editor and glanced at her watch. It was almost 6. Michael had written that he would be late, another meeting with the prosecution team. She dialed the Nampa Police Department. "Detective Montgomery, how can I help you?" The voice on the other end of the line sounded tired but collected. "Hello, Detective. This is Sarah Hartman from the Idaho Press-Tribune. I'm working on a story about the Carlisle case and would like to ask you a few questions." Pause. Then, "Mrs. Hartman, Michael's wife. I'm not sure it's a good idea to discuss the case with the press, especially given your personal connections. It's not for publication, Sarah replied quickly. Just general information to understand the context. Maybe over a cup of coffee? Another pause. Okay, in an hour at the River Cafe, but no recording, and I reserve the right not to answer questions related to the investigation. The River Cafe was a quiet place on the banks of the Boise River, away from the city center and typical police hangouts. Carol Montgomery was a tall woman of about 45, with short red hair and an attentive gaze. She sat at a table in the back, sipping what looked like whiskey, even though it was only 7 in the evening. Mrs. Hartman, she didn't get up, just pointed to the chair opposite her. I must admit, I'm surprised by your interest. As far as I know, your husband doesn't like to share details of his cases. Sarah ordered coffee and smiled. Call me Sarah, and you're right, Michael prefers to keep his work separate from home. But the Carlisle case is too high profile to ignore, especially for a journalist. Still, the detective leaned forward. What specifically interests you? This doesn't seem like a typical journalist's request. Sarah paused, weighing how candid she could be. This case changed Michael. He became different, distant, secretive. I want to understand if this is related to the investigation or... She didn't finish her sentence. Montgomery studied her face for a long time, then said quietly, "This is a complicated case. It involves many influential people. Your husband is handling it in an unconventional way." What do you mean? Some meetings are held without protocol. Some witnesses are questioned without other officers present. It's not a violation of procedure, but it's unusual for Michael Hartman, who is known to be a stickler for the rules. Sarah felt a chill run down her spine. Do you think something's wrong? I didn't say that, the detective replied quickly. Just stating the facts. Michael is a brilliant prosecutor, and if he's chosen this tactic, he has his reasons. She paused. You know, there are a lot of victims in this case. Some of them still work in the city. For example, that young barista at Starbucks on 12th. Jaden? Sarah couldn't hide her surprise. You know him? Now it was Montgomery's turn to be surprised. I go there. We exchanged a few words, nothing more. It's a tough story. His mother was a drug addict. His father is unknown. He entered the foster care system at the age of 10 and has been in 5 foster homes. At 14, he started working for Carlisle, first as a janitor, then as a trainee coach. That's where it happened. Sarah remembered Jaden's look, his strange reaction to the mention of Michael. Is he one of the main witnesses? I can't comment on that, Montgomery cut her off. But Michael spent a lot of time with him, to prepare his testimony, of course. Something in the detective's tone made Sarah wary. She changed the subject. What about the other cases? I heard Michael recently visited the state prison. Montgomery raised an eyebrow in surprise. You're well informed. Yes, I'm talking about Richard Donovan. The case from 5 years ago. One of your husband's first big cases in Nampa. Donovan got 20 years for raping his own daughter, Emily. She was 13. The detective finished her whiskey. He was recently transferred to the county jail to testify in another case. He still maintains his innocence and that Michael fabricated the evidence. Do you believe that? Michael is a good prosecutor. Maybe a little too passionate, but I've never heard of him fabricating evidence. She glanced at her watch. I have to go. It was nice meeting you, Sarah. And be careful with your journalistic investigation. Sometimes the truth can be different from what we imagine it to be. The detective left, leaving Sarah with new questions. She took out her phone and checked her messages. Michael wrote that he would be home by 11. It was now 8:30, enough time to stop by the house and check something. Their spacious home was unusually quiet. Sarah went up to Michael's study, a place she rarely entered, respecting his space. The desk was perfectly clean, with folders neatly arranged in drawers. Nothing suspicious. The computer required a password, which she did not know. In the bedroom, Sarah checked the drawers of Michael's dresser, then moved on to the bedside table. Under a stack of books lay an old phone, a spare that he had stopped using a few months ago. To Sarah's surprise, the phone turned on without a password. There was almost nothing on it. All contacts, photos, and apps had long since been deleted. But the Messenger app still had a conversation with a number and no name. Short messages, mostly about meetings. The last one was dated 3 months earlier. Tomorrow at 8. Same place. Delete this message. Sarah took a screenshot and sent it to her phone. Then she carefully put everything back in its place and went downstairs. In the living room, she noticed a folder that Michael had apparently forgotten to put away. An unusual oversight for such a meticulous person. The folder contained copies of witness statements in the Carlisle case, most of the names hidden behind code names. But one statement caught her attention, the testimony of witness J, dated last month. The handwriting was uneven, as if written by a teenager. The statement described meetings in a private room at the fitness center, coercion into sexual acts, and threats. But strangely, some details had been crossed out and corrected with another pen. Sarah recognized Michael's firm handwriting. The sound of an engine on the driveway made her jump. She quickly put the folder back in its place and opened her laptop, pretending to work. Michael entered, looking tired but strangely excited. "You're early," Sarah remarked. "The meeting ended sooner than I thought." He kissed her on the cheek. He didn't smell of alcohol or cologne, as he usually did after late meetings, but of coffee and something sweet. "I wasn't expecting you home. I thought you'd be at the office late today." "I finished early," she smiled. "How's it going with Carlisle?" "We're making progress." Michael waved his hand vaguely. "I have an important meeting with a witness in the morning, so I'm going to bed early." He went upstairs without saying another word. Sarah heard the shower turn on, then the bed creak in the bedroom. Half an hour later, she quietly approached the door. Michael was already fast asleep. Picking up her husband's phone from the table in the hall, she saw a notification of a new message. The number was unfamiliar, the text concise. "Tomorrow at 7. Starbucks on 12th. Need to talk." Sarah slowly put the phone back in its place. Starbucks on 12th. Where Jaden worked, one of Michael's witnesses in the Carlisle case. A young man with a complicated history, as Detective Montgomery put it, whose handwriting might have been on that statement, and whose testimony Michael had edited. The decision came instantly. Tomorrow at 7, she would be at Starbucks. Not inside, but across the street, in a small bakery with a great view of the coffee shop's entrance. And she would find out what was going on between her husband and this boy, even if the truth turned out to be completely different from what she imagined. Sarah parked her car 100 yards from Starbucks, where she had a clear view of the coffee shop's entrance. It was 6:45 in the morning, and the streets of Nampa were just beginning to come to life. She was holding a small camera with a powerful zoom lens, borrowed from a photographer at the editorial office under the pretext of spying on a corrupt official. In a sense, that was the case. At 5 minutes to 7, Michael's black SUV pulled up. He got out, looked around the street, and entered the coffee shop. Sarah pointed the camera at the windows, but the morning sun's reflection made it impossible to see anything. She waited 5 minutes and crossed the street, taking a table in the bakery opposite. The view was better from there. Through the glass, she could see Michael sitting at a table in the back. Jaden was behind the counter, serving the few morning customers. Their eyes met several times, but there was no conversation. At 7:30, Michael looked at his watch, got up, and headed for the service corridor leading to the restrooms and utility rooms. A minute later, Jaden followed him there. Sarah quickly crossed the street and entered Starbucks. Only the cashier was behind the counter. After placing her order, Sarah sat down at a table overlooking the service corridor, took out her laptop, and pretended to work. 10 minutes passed, then 15. Finally, the door opened and Jaden came out, pale, with red eyes. A minute later, Michael appeared behind him. His face was impenetrable, but his tie was slightly crooked, an unusual detail for the always impeccable prosecutor. Michael walked past her, not noticing her in the corner, and left the coffee shop. Jaden returned to the counter, mechanically going about his work. Sarah waited another half hour, watching him. His hands trembled slightly as he prepared drinks, and once he dropped a cup, which, judging by his colleague's reaction, did not usually happen to him. Sarah approached the counter when the coffee shop was almost empty. "Good morning, Jaden," she said, watching his reaction. The guy flinched when he recognized her. "Mrs. Hartman, I didn't see you. Are you okay? You look upset." "I'm fine, just didn't get enough sleep." He looked away. "What would you like to order?" "An Americano with a double espresso." Sarah kept her eyes on him. "And maybe an answer to the question, what's going on between you and my husband?" The cup he was holding fell to the floor with a crash. "I don't know what you're talking about." "I think you do." Her voice was quiet but firm. "You're a witness in the Carlisle case, right? Witness J?" Jaden's face turned even paler. "Where did you get that?" he stammered. "Mrs. Hartman, I can't discuss this. Why did Michael edit your testimony?" She leaned closer. "What was in it originally?" "Please," he whispered, "not here. I'll be fired if they find out." "Then where?" Jaden looked around. "Tomorrow at Lakewood Park, at 5. "I finish at 4. He paused. "Mrs. Hartman, you don't know what you're getting yourself into." "But you seem to know," Sarah replied, picking up her coffee. "See you tomorrow, Jaden." When she got home, she found that Michael had already left for court. There was a note on the kitchen table. "Official reception at the mayor's house tonight. Wear a black dress. Love, M." An official reception, a public event with dozens of witnesses, the perfect way to create an alibi and distract attention. Sarah called the mayor's office under the pretext of preparing an article and clarified the details. The reception was indeed planned, in honor of the start of construction on a new wing of the city hospital. The presence of the district attorney and his wife was expected. The next call was to Detective Montgomery. "What do you know about Richard Donovan's transfer?" Sarah asked as soon as the detective answered. "Good morning to you too, Mrs. Hartman," Montgomery said ironically. "Why the interest in Donovan?" "Professional curiosity. He was convicted of a crime against a minor. Michael is handling the Carlisle case, which also involves minors. Coincidence?" "Donovan has been transferred to the county jail to testify in a case of corruption in the prison administration," Montgomery replied after a pause. "No connection to Carlisle, but I've heard he's still obsessed with Michael. He believes your husband set him up, fabricated the evidence." "Are you sure that's not the case?" Another pause. "Mrs. Hartman, be careful what you assume. Your husband is a respected man in this town. Donovan is a criminal with nothing to lose. His daughter Emily gave very convincing testimony against him." "And where is she now, this girl?" "Emily?" Montgomery's voice sounded uncertain. "As far as I know, she moved in with relatives in another state. After everything that happened, it was for the best." Sarah made a note in her notebook. "Thank you, Detective. That's all." That evening, Michael returned home to change for the reception. He was unusually quiet and avoided Sarah's gaze. When she came out of the bathroom in a black evening gown, he gave her a strange, appraising look. "You look beautiful," he said, but there was no warmth in his voice. "Michael, we need to talk," Sarah said, sitting down on the edge of the bed. "What's going on? You've changed. We've changed." He fastened his cufflinks and turned to her. "Now is not the time, Sarah. Important people are waiting for us." "More important than your wife? Than our marriage?" Michael came over and took her hand. "You're the most important thing I have. It's just a difficult period right now." He leaned over and kissed her on the forehead. "Everything will be fine soon, I promise. As soon as the Carlisle case is over." "And what will happen when it's over?" He smiled, but the smile didn't reach his eyes. "We'll take a vacation. We'll go somewhere, just the two of us, like before." The reception was lavish by the standards of a small town. The mayor, the city council, influential businessmen, department heads. Michael moved easily among the groups of guests, exchanging handshakes and jokes. He was in his element, charming, confident, the center of attention. Sarah stood by the window with a glass of champagne, watching her husband. Suddenly, she noticed Detective Montgomery standing alone at the bar. "I didn't expect to see you here," Sarah said, approaching her. "Official invitation," Montgomery shrugged, "for public relations purposes." They paused, watching the crowd. "Have you learned anything since our last conversation?" the detective asked. "I'm meeting with Sh0t tomorrow," Sarah replied quietly. "He was very frightened after meeting with Michael this morning." Montgomery turned sharply to her. "Are you watching your husband?" "I'm looking for the truth, detective." "Be careful. Sometimes the truth can be more dangerous than lies, especially when people in power are involved." "You know something," she said. It was a statement, not a question. "What exactly?" Montgomery finished her drink. "Let's just say I have questions about the Carlisle case that remain unanswered. And your husband isn't the only one who may be involved." She put down her empty glass. "Take care, Mrs. Hartman, and know that not all the pieces in this game are visible on the board." On the way home, Michael received a call and, apologizing, spoke in a low voice for a long time. Sarah only heard the phrases, "No, everything is going according to plan," and "We'll finish tomorrow." "Who was that?" she asked when he finished the call. "An assistant. New material on the case," Michael replied without looking at her. "At 11 o'clock at night?" "Justice never sleeps, honey." He smiled, but his eyes remained cold. At home, Sarah couldn't sleep. When Michael finally fell asleep, she carefully took his phone. There were no recent messages. He must have deleted them. But in his calendar, she found a note for tomorrow. 5 o'clock Starbucks. Final decision. 5 o'clock. The same time Sh0t had arranged to meet her in the park. Coincidence? Or a trap? Sarah put the phone back and lay in the dark for a long time, staring at the ceiling. Whatever Michael was hiding, tomorrow everything would be decided. In the morning, she saw her husband off, who seemed to have completely returned to his usual behavior, caring, attentive, even bringing her coffee in bed. But his eyes betrayed his anxiety, and his hands, hugging her goodbye, trembled slightly. Sarah spent the whole day at the office, mechanically doing her work. At 3 o'clock, she excused herself, citing a headache, and went home. There, she took the small tape recorder she used for interviews and a miniature camera. If Michael really did meet Sh0t at Starbucks, she wanted to have proof. She also felt the cold metal in her bag. It was a small gun that Michael had insisted she carry after a series of attacks on women 2 years ago. She never thought she would have to use it, and she hoped she wouldn't. At 4:30, Sarah parked near Lakewood Park. Michael's message mentioned Starbucks, but Sh0t had arranged to meet her here. Sarah decided to meet the guy first, and then maybe follow him to the coffee shop. She was sitting on a bench by the pond when Sh0t entered the park. He was still wearing his Starbucks uniform, but he looked even more exhausted than yesterday. Noticing Sarah, he approached hesitantly and sat down nearby, keeping his distance. "I'm not sure this is a good idea," he said quietly. "Why?" "Because your husband is dangerous, Mrs. Hartman, and not just to me." Sarah turned on the voice recorder in her pocket. "Tell me everything, Sh0t, from the beginning." The young man took a deep breath. "It started when I was 14. The sun was setting when Sh0t finished his story in Lakewood Park. Sarah sat motionless, her hands clenched into fists, her voice hoarse with restrained emotion. "And it's all true?" she asked. "Can you prove it?" "There are reports," Sh0t replied quietly, "and other witnesses, but everyone's afraid to talk. He's a prosecutor, Mrs. Hartman. He can break anyone." Sarah glanced at her watch. 5:30. Michael's calendar had a note about a meeting at Starbucks at 5. "I have to go," she said, standing up. "Stay here, Sh0t. Don't leave until I get back." Where are you going? Fear flashed in his eyes. He can't know I talked to you. Don't worry, I just want to check something. The Starbucks on 12th was almost empty at this time of day. The after-work rush hadn't started yet, and the daytime crowd had already dispersed. Michael's black SUV was in the parking lot. Sarah went inside, pulling her jacket hood up and putting on her sunglasses. Behind the counter was an unfamiliar girl who barely glanced at her. "Americano, please," Sarah asked, looking around the room. Michael was nowhere to be seen. Not at any of the tables, not by the window. She looked around again and noticed a door ajar leading to the service corridor. Sarah paid, took her coffee, and slowly headed toward the restrooms. The corridor was empty and dimly lit. The door to the men's room was closed, but muffled voices could be heard coming from behind it. Sarah recognized Michael's authoritative tone, then another voice, quiet, young, trembling with fear or excitement. Placing her hand on the door, Sarah froze. Should she go in? What exactly would she see? And could she live with that knowledge? The seconds stretched into an eternity. Then, pushing the door decisively, she entered. In the far corner of the restroom, Michael was pinning a young man against the wall. Not Jaden, another guy, very young, maybe 16, wearing a Starbucks green apron. Michael's one hand was on the boy's neck, the other on his waist. They both turned their heads at the sound of the door opening, and Sarah saw different emotions. Horror in the teenager's eyes, cold rage in her husband's. "Sarah." Michael's voice was calm, as if she had caught him reading the morning paper. "It's not what you think." "What am I supposed to think, Michael?" Her voice trembled. "That the district attorney is pinning a minor boy against the wall in a cafe bathroom? How else can this be interpreted?" Michael let go of the boy, who immediately slipped toward the exit, but Sarah blocked his way. "Stop. What's your name?" "T. Tyler," the boy muttered. "Please don't tell anyone. I need this job." "Go home, Tyler," Sarah said, "and don't come back here while Mr. Hartman is in office." When the boy left, Michael straightened up and adjusted his tie. "You don't understand what you're doing, Sarah. This is part of the investigation." "What part of the investigation involves physical contact with underage witnesses?" Her hand involuntarily reached for the bag where the gun was, but stopped. "How many were there, Michael? Jaden? That boy? Who else?" "You're being too emotional." He took a step toward her. "Let's go home. I'll explain everything. It's a complicated situation." "Don't come near me." Sarah backed away. "I know everything, Michael. Jaden told me. How you used your position to silence him. How you threatened other witnesses. How you falsified testimony." Michael's face changed. The mask of confidence slipped, revealing something dark and dangerous. "And you believed some kid? Against your husband?" He laughed, but it was a cold laugh. "What are you going to do? Go to the police?" "Who? Montgomery? She's under my control. The newspaper? Do you think anyone will believe you without proof?" "I have proof." Sarah straightened up. "Recordings, messages. And I've just seen enough." For a moment, fear flashed in Michael's eyes, but he quickly regained his composure. "We'll discuss this at home," he said, walking past her toward the door. "Don't do anything stupid, Sarah. You have something to lose too." She didn't follow him, remaining where she was, leaning against the cold wall of the restroom. Inside, a hurricane of emotions raged. Disgust, anger, pain, disappointment. 15 years of marriage had turned to ashes in an instant. Sarah didn't remember how she left the cafe, how she got into the car, how she drove to the park. Jaden was waiting for her, shifting nervously from foot to foot. "Did you see him?" he asked, noticing her state. "Yes," Sarah replied simply. "With another boy, Tyler." Jaden nodded. "He's new. Started last week. Michael always picks new, vulnerable ones. Those who need money or protection." "Go home, Jaden," Sarah said. Tomorrow I'll go to the police, to Chief Montgomery if necessary. This will end. She didn't go home that night. She checked into a motel on the outskirts of town, turned off her phone, lay in bed fully clothed, and stared at the ceiling. Thoughts swirled in her head like vultures circling their prey. How could she not have seen it? How could she have been so blind? And what to do now with the knowledge that had shattered her entire world? At some point, Sarah fell asleep. She was awakened by a knock on the motel door. Detective Montgomery stood in the doorway, her face grim. "Mrs. Hartman," she said, "I need you to come with me." "What happened?" "Your husband is dead. He was shot in his car this morning." The world around Sarah swam. The room spun. She grabbed the doorframe. "How? Who?" "We're investigating," replied the detective. "A patrol officer found the body at 7 in the morning. Michael was in his car in the parking lot at Deer Flat Lake. 1 bullet to the head, presumably from a .22 caliber pistol. The parking lot at the lake, a place they often went to in the early years of their marriage to watch the sunset." "When was the last time you saw your husband?" Montgomery asked, watching Sarah's reaction closely. "Yesterday at the cafe, around 5:30. "Starbucks on 12th? Sarah nodded. "We need you to identify the body." The detective's voice softened. "And give a statement." The morgue at Nampa County Hospital was sterile, white, and cold. Michael's body lay under a sheet, his face calm, almost peaceful. Only a small hole in his forehead indicated a violent death. "Is this your husband, Michael Hartman?" the pathologist asked formally. "Yes," Sarah replied. "It's him." The next few hours were spent at the police station. Montgomery asked questions. Sarah answered, mechanically, as if watching herself from the outside. She told her about Michael's strange behavior, her suspicions, the meeting at Starbucks. But she said nothing about Jaden, about the testimony, about what she had seen in the cafe bathroom. It wasn't time yet. "Where did you spend the night?" Montgomery asked. "At the Pine Paradise Motel. You can check the registration." "Why didn't you go home?" Sarah looked at the detective. "Because I was afraid of my husband, or what I might do to him." Montgomery studied her face closely. "Do you have a weapon, Mrs. Hartman?" "A .22 caliber pistol. Michael insisted I carry it for protection. It's in my purse." The detective nodded and called an officer who took Sarah's purse. "We'll check it against the bullet removed from your husband's body. It's standard procedure." "I understand," Sarah said. "Do you think I killed him?" "I don't think anything yet," Montgomery replied. "I'm just gathering information." After the interview, Sarah was released, but asked not to leave town. When she left the station, the sun was already setting, the second sunset without Michael. The world seemed strangely ordinary, as if nothing had happened. At the same time, Jaden was sitting in the neighboring interrogation room. Pale, with red eyes from lack of sleep, he nervously fiddled with the sleeve of his jacket. "Tell me about your relationship with District Attorney Hartman," Montgomery said, turning on the tape recorder. "He was my probation officer," Jaden began. "After the Carlisle incident, I was one of the witnesses." "And when did that relationship become personal?" Jaden swallowed. "Almost immediately. He said he could help me get a better deal if I cooperated. At first, it was just meetings in his office, then in his car. Then, did he force you to perform sexual acts?" "Yes," the boy replied quietly. "Many times. And not just me. There were others. Boys from the Carlisle case, and new ones he found himself." "Why didn't you report this earlier?" Jaden looked at the detective as if she were a naive child. "To whom? The police who work with him every day? The media who consider him a hero? Who would believe a teenager with a history of drug addiction against a respected prosecutor?" Montgomery made a note in her notebook. "Where were you last night and this morning?" "At home with my foster mother last night. She can confirm that. This morning I was at work at Starbucks from 6 o'clock. There are cameras there you can check." On the other side of town, police officers led Richard Donovan down the corridor of the county jail. He was a tall, emaciated man in his 50s, with deep wrinkles on his face and a dull look in his eyes. "Mr. Donovan," Montgomery began, as he was led into the interrogation room. "Have you heard about the death of District Attorney Hartman?" Donovan's lips stretched into a crooked smile. "I've heard. Too bad I didn't pull the trigger." "So you admit you wanted him dead?" "He ruined my life, Detective." Donovan leaned forward. "He set me up, fabricated evidence, turned my daughter against me. 15 years in prison for a crime I didn't commit. Yes, I wanted him dead. Every single day." "Do you have an alibi for last night and this morning?" Donovan laughed. "I'm in prison, Detective. Under surveillance 24 hours a day. Is that enough of an alibi?" "You could have hired someone." "On a prison janitor's salary?" He shook his head. "I'm grateful to whoever did it. But it wasn't me." Back in her office, Montgomery laid out the crime scene photos on her desk. Michael Hartman had been found in his car with a clean bullet hole in his forehead. The keys were in the ignition, the engine was off. There were no signs of a struggle or robbery. His personal belongings, including an expensive watch and a wallet with money, were left untouched. Everything pointed to Michael knowing his killer. Perhaps he was even expecting him, or her. A board of suspects began to take shape on the wall of Montgomery's office. Jaden Rivers, the victim, with a motive, but with an alibi. Richard Donovan, a man with a powerful motive for revenge, but locked up in prison. Michael's other enemies, lost cases, fired colleagues, jealous husbands or wives of those with whom he may have had relationships. And Sarah Hartman, a woman whose world collapsed in a single day, who had a gun of the same caliber as the murder weapon, whose alibi at the motel did not cover the early morning hours, and who may have known more about her husband than she revealed. Detective Carol Montgomery hadn't left her office for 2 days. The walls were covered with photographs and notes. In the center was a photo of Michael Hartman, surrounded by the names of suspects: Sarah Hartman, Jaden Rivers, Richard Donovan, Tyler McCarthy. The examination confirmed that the bullet extracted from Michael's head matched the caliber of Sarah's gun, but the gun itself had not been used. However, there was a second gun of the same caliber listed in the database, allegedly lost by Sarah a year ago. The time of death was determined to be between midnight and 3 in the morning. During this time, Sarah was officially at the Pine Paradise Motel, but cameras recorded her car leaving at 11:30 and returning at 2:15. The last call from Michael's phone was made to Sarah at 10:45. "I need to talk to you. Meet me at our place at midnight. Please come alone." The key piece of evidence was a recording from a camera at an abandoned gas station half a mile from the lake. It clearly showed Sarah's car driving to the lake at 20 minutes past midnight and returning at 2 minutes past midnight. "That doesn't prove she killed him," remarked Montgomery's partner, Officer Jim Parker. "Only that she was with him." "Yes, but combined with her lie that she was at the motel all night, it's serious," Montgomery replied. "And there's something else. After Jaden's arrest and the news of the prosecutor's murder, 4 more young people came to the police. All of them were witnesses or worked on the Carlisle case, and all of them were abused by Michael. He said that if I told anyone, he would accuse me of being Carlisle's accomplice," said 17-year-old Alex in a trembling voice. He had evidence that he could present. Among those who came was Tyler, whom Sarah found in the Starbucks bathroom. "Mrs. Hartman saved me," he said. "If she hadn't walked in then." After reviewing the old Richard Donovan case files, Montgomery discovered strange similarities to the Carlisle case. Testimony with a similar structure, conveniently appearing evidence, and Emily Donovan, the main witness against her father, who disappeared after the trial. Officer Frank Johnson, who handled the initial investigation, admitted, "The evidence appeared too conveniently, and only when it was needed. But who would doubt the testimony of a child, and the professionalism of a rising star in the prosecutor's office?" "Do you think Michael Hartman faked the evidence?" The Donovan case made his career. He went from assistant prosecutor to deputy prosecutor, and 2 years later to chief prosecutor of the district. And the girl, Emily, where did she go? Officially, she moved to her aunt's in Oregon, but I checked. There was no aunt, and no trace of Emily since the trial ended. At a charity reception, Montgomery noticed a waitress who resembled Emily Donovan in her childhood photos. A check of Michael's finances revealed regular payments to an Emily Summers, a name close to Emily's mother's maiden name. The decisive clue was found in a trash can 2 blocks from the motel, a bag with gloves with traces of gunpowder and a gun. Ballistics confirmed that it was the murder weapon, and Sarah's DNA was found on the gloves. Sarah did not resist arrest. A hidden box of flash drives was found in the house, containing evidence of Michael's crimes, recordings, photographs, correspondence. She had been collecting them for a long time. In the interrogation room, Sarah refused a lawyer. "Yes, I killed Michael, and I am ready to face the punishment." "Why didn't you go to the police with the evidence?" Montgomery asked. "Do you know how influential Michael was in this town? Even with the evidence, the most that would have happened is a quiet resignation and a move to another state, where he would have started all over again." "Did you set up the meeting with him?" "No, he called me. He wanted to negotiate a divorce in exchange for my silence. But when I saw him, so confident in his impunity, I realized he would never stop. There would be other victims." "And you decided to become a judge?" "I decided to protect those he might destroy in the future." Sarah's eyes filled with tears. "He said Sh0t wasn't the first. It all started back in Boise, with Emily Donovan. The girl turned to him for help because of abuse, and he forced her to give false testimony against her father, then hid her, making her his first victim. She was 13. "I didn't expect him to confess," Sarah continued. "He was so sure I wouldn't go to the police that he decided to brag. I had a gun in my bag. I just took it out and shot him." "Where is Emily now?" "I don't know. Michael said she went out of use a few years ago. I fear the worst." The story quickly made its way into the press, the fall of a respected prosecutor, the exposure of his crimes, the tragic ending. 2 weeks later, the first court hearing took place. Sarah pleaded guilty to second-degree murder. As they left the courthouse, Sh0t approached Montgomery. "They found Emily. She's living under a different name in Portland. She's willing to testify." "That could help mitigate Sarah's sentence and get Donovan's case reviewed," the detective replied. "What do you think they'll give her?" "Given the circumstances, 5 to 15 years, with the possibility of early release." "Did she know what she was doing that night?" "Yes, and she's willing to pay the price." The courtroom was packed on sentencing day. When Sarah was asked if she had anything to say, she turned to the packed benches. "I don't regret what I did, but I regret not seeing the truth sooner, not stopping him before he ruined so many lives." She looked at the judge. "The truth kills slowly, a bullet kills quickly. I chose the bullet, and I will accept the consequences of that choice."